Peace, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba, a member of the Public Relations Committee. And you want to introduce yourself, Frank? Oh, you're on mute, brother.
Sorry. This is Frank Malba, and peace, brothers and sisters, to you all. I am the chair for the Political Action Committee of WCC.
All right, we charge colonialism and African tyranny, aka African Esquire, should be joining us soon, hopefully. So we're here again to discuss issues that are central to the African American or African experience, I should say, at home and in the diaspora. We like to begin our book club with a weekly roundup, and so we look at current events and we discuss what's happening around the world. So we want to begin with Frank. You want to talk about Africom and neocolonialism?
Yeah. This thing have been going on for quite a long time. I would say since 2006 with Africom, and it was Obama that came and actually enforced it. So one of our brother Eugene, he gave a very profound perspective of the ideology of the neocolonialists into Africa and what they are causing within Africa. So, and the whole discussion about that topic is that with the 1884 Bryant Conference, it was all the European and American or Western society that went together. But with today, neocolonialists, the African leaders are also being part of it. In that, recently we have seen how almost all the African leaders were in China and becoming part of this meeting on how these outside war can colonize Africa. We have seen that most of these leaders also have been in Great Britain, partaking meetings and stuff with these neocolonialists for these people to come into Africa to supersede the continent. And he also gave a very broad understanding about the 9/11 thing that happened. I think there's a movie out there, is just part of it. It says we create the chaos and capitalize on the chaos. And he also said that this whole 9/11 thing was something that was created by the imperialists so that they can capitalize on it and get into other nations to destabilize the place and say, oh, we are fighting, I say, oh, we are fighting terrorists. And meanwhile, these are the same people that funding these terrorists into these countries, the so-called or terror country, just to exploit their resources and thing. So he also talked about, the proliferation of materialism on the continent. That's one thing, these African nations, the Western world are building their army, and it is only the entire African continent are not investing into building an army. So how will you allow also army to come into your country or to come into your continent, and then build their military, and stuff, and you being on a continent, you don't even have that military power. And when we say military power, we are not just saying, recruiting large number of African and empowering them and stuff. No, but we are talking about being a military in terms of equipment, in terms of you being the one to provide for yourself, in terms of you being the one to build your machinery and your weapon and all of those things, your drum and all of those things. So yeah, so it is a new form of neocolonialism that is taking place. And we should also know that with the imperialists, they don't mind killing few of their people. They don't mind sacrificing few of their people, like what Eugene said with the 9/11 to accomplish their aim. So that's just another thing that is taking place in Africa. We have all these foreign military, on the continent, and just supporting the resources, and they are all to places where they have all the resources and things.
My apologies, y'all, for being late. I just got off the road, literally. So.
Nah, you're here, so it's all good. Appreciate you being able to make it too. And yeah, I think Frank, you raised a lot of great points. That particular video that you were viewing, that we were viewing, we probably want to get that in the chat if it's not there already, so people can take a look at that, because I think in that video, the interviewee is like raising some great points, and he gives a great analysis of Africom, and he goes through this history too of colonialism and neocolonialism. I think like some of the points we should take away when it comes to Africom is Africom is there to secure America's foothold in Africa, and to create like this sphere of influence as well, for the U.S. They're looking at China and who else is it? China, I guess Europe is competition as well, but really China is that big competitor that is now has that China now has a foothold in Africa, so are making their footprint in Africa, so they're trying to counterbalance that. Also, like the when you look at the true mission of Africom as well, is neocolonialism in nature. I was reading this article, and they were talking about this guy. He was the former commander of Africom, Robert Moeller. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But he talked about what Africom is there for. And he said that let there be no mistake, Africom's job is to protect America's lives and promote America's interests. So he made it clear. And so I think we all need to be clear on why Africom is in America and not be deluded into thinking it's something else, like for security purposes and so forth. It's to secure colonialism, if anything. But yeah, Tierney, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, I'll chime in on. So Africom, it's the same old, really, if you think about the general scheme of how neocolonialism worked. Kwame Nkrumah, he said that military occupation is one of the most dangerous stages of neocolonialism. Because if you think about it, if the people start organizing, then you have a foreign presence that's there to derail any movement of the people. So when we think about what people like Kwame Nkrumah were envisioning for Africa, they were envisioning Africa having being united, and as a united force, having a continent-wide army to prevent the same thing that's happening right now, to where you have Americans coming in and funding certain troops. You have the French government coming in and funding certain troops. So you have foreign occupation. So if you think about it, when the day comes when Africans start asserting their right to have their own militaries funded by them, there's going to be hell that's unleashed. I mean, it's like an inevitable war, because you're telling the imperialists that you have to leave and that we're going to instead be able to govern our own territories. But this is the setup with neocolonialism, as you were saying, Ikemba. The other thing to also keep in mind is that obviously with Africom, you need the leaders to be complicit with the system. Otherwise, they won't be able to operate inside of each individual country. So it really becomes a systemic issue. It's not just about telling the U.S. to get out of Africa, but it's really about going from top to bottom. If you look at, like I said, the French troops are all over West Africa. You also have British troops. You have Russian troops. You have troops literally from all the imperialist powers stationed inside of Africa. And if we're not recognizing that these presidents who are puppets really of the Western interests are the ones who are giving them license to come into their territories, then we won't be able to adequately organize around that topic. So it's a real struggle. It's a struggle for our people, and we should look at Africa in the same way that people, if you're based in the U.S., you look at the police a certain way. They're basically the world police. They're the police of America that is pushing their interests inside of Africa. So it's definitely a real issue. It's something that we're going to have to deal with, and God willing, we'll deal with it soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that. I think like that's what Frank, you had brought up that example of the Berlin Conference, and at the Berlin Conference, how it was just European leaders at the table making a decision on how they were going to carve up Africa and exploit it for its resources. And where we have today, as you mentioned, there's African leaders who are complicit. Tierney mentioned this too, is just complicit in how they're going to exploit Africa. And I think like Africans can't be fooled into thinking like Europeans or white people are going to tell us exactly why they're coming in, because they from the gate they're just like, yeah, we're there for security reasons, Al Qaeda, terrorism, all of this playing on the fears of the working class, African working class, and it's just like that's a pretext for them to come in and really push their agenda, which is global domination.
Yeah, and to add something to that point that you made, so the thing about Africom that makes it unique from other military presence is that they're basically there without any threat, like leading to them being there. I mean, at least for Middle East occupation, they could say, well, there was 9/11 or all these things, the Taliban or whatever. But the question is, who is America warring against in Africa? I mean, no one can really tell you. So they're there, but if you look at the reasons, like they have like a mission statement. They say like things like that are like charitable, like, oh, we're there for the African continent to ensure stability, but we know that that's not how they operate.
And let me just add to that quick, Brother Nkrumah, before you go. I think if we can recall, if I can recall the time, or somebody can correct me, I think that was 2016 or 2017 when the Nigerian army came out and accused a French organization that this NGO, non-governmental NGO from France, are the one that are funding Boko Haram. Now imagine the Nigeria is a whole country with a very large, huge army, but up to this time, the Nigerian army cannot defeat Boko Haram, who is just a small handful or group of people. And Boko Haram have all these modern weapons, and Boko Haram have guys and things that they can use. And since the existence of Boko Haram in Nigeria have not overcome Boko Haram. And it was stated that this French organization sponsoring are the ones sponsoring Boko Haram with all these modern weapons and with all these guns and things. So these people are on our continent, to destabilize the place, to make sure to get Africa in a state where it can be that they can control Africa as well. So these foreign military, these foreign organizations, they are not in Africa for the interest of African people. So that is why we African and African leaders, we have to get together and say no to these foreign military and these foreign organizations. Because if indeed they were really happy Africa, then Africa should be a first world country right now, that they can say first world. Africa should be a first world country right now, because they have all these charity organizations in Africa since 1884. And Africa is still the same, and African people are still the same. And Brother Eugene mentioned something in a video that these organizations they create problem in Africa that gave the African women a very tough time to compete. And then there will be the same organization, the same foreign entity that will come out to say Africa create a hostile environment that gave women very hard time to compete. Now these are the same people that come into Africa and create an area and create an entity where it becomes difficult for African women to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that add-on right there. And just so people know, Eugene Perrier, we're talking about Eugene Perrier, who is giving this analysis. And he has a podcast called The Punch Out, just in case people are interested in hearing more from Eugene Perrier. Yeah, so we're gonna move along to our next discussion topic, and we're going to talk about what's happening with the move. The move is in the news right now. And Tierney, you want to tell us what's going on?
It's a sick story, honestly. So I seen it a couple of days ago, but whenever you brought it back up, Ikemba, I was like, we should really talk about this, because it just shows the disgusting nature of white supremacy, obviously, but also white academia. and they pretend so much like they're not racist and like they're just studying and that science is, you know, not motivated by any type of eugenicist thought. But then you see them like do things consistently throughout history. So I'm sure most of you know, in 1985, there was a horrific bombing of a Philadelphia neighborhood. It was called the Move bombing. Essentially, there's a Black liberation group and the Philadelphia police bombed. They considered themselves a family. They bombed this home, killing adults and children. Now, when this happened, there was the bodies of 2 children who, like, it was always assumed that it just, I guess, because they bombed it, that their remains were never just recovered. All this time, we find out that their remains were inside of a museum inside of Pennsylvania, being studied. This is 1985, people. This is not like some 1800s or whatever. This is like not too long ago. You know, some of us, many of you probably remember when this even happened. They've been studying these children's remains. And so, you know, the article, you know, that I read about it, it was crazy because you hear these like people like discussing, because essentially they lost the remains. They don't know where they are. It was at a Pennsylvania museum, and then it was transferred to Princeton University for I guess further studying. And now they're like, oh well, we don't know where it is. You know, we think it's just inside of this lab with this other person. And you know, you hear people saying, well, you know, they should have been practicing climate control to ensure that the bodies were kept in good shape, and talking like these are not humans. Like this is just a science experiment to them. So it was just very, it just shows you just how horrific these people are. All this time, it was anthropologists and scientists and everything like doing this, and no one had the conscience to think that these were children who were murdered by the police. They deserve a burial. They deserve a decent burial. So their families didn't even know all the time that their bodies were inside of a museum. So it just reminded me of, like, you know, the whole long history of a medical apartheid in America, obviously. Globally also, we know, obviously, Sarah Bartman, her body was taken to a museum and put on display just over and over again. But just be aware, people, that whenever they tell you that the sciences and everything, that they're not biased or that they're not racially motivated, they just showed you right here. They didn't even look at these children as human enough to notify their parents to, you know, allow them to, you know, if someone's going to give your body for medical testing, that's one thing, but to just take it and, you know, keep it all this time in boxes in a museum, it's just horrific.
Yeah, it's, you know, it, like you said, it's sick and disgusting. They never cease to amaze me.
It's true. Like when I hear this stuff, I want to be like, well, you should have known, but it's like still, like, you would think by now, like, a level of like decency would have emerged, but still.
Yeah, you would think. And so, you know, it goes to show exactly what we're dealing with, you know, so many levels. Just thinking about, you know, a century ago in Namibia, when the Germans committed genocide against the Namibian people. I think one of the groups was the Herero ethnic group, and how they were taking the bones. I mean, they were taking the skulls of the deceased Namibians and sending them back to Germany and studying these skulls. It's, you know, it's really sick. The move, there's going to be a press conference in Philadelphia this Wednesday that's going to be addressing that because there's MOVE members who are still here. Several MOVE members were just released during the pandemic, who were locked up since 1978, I think 79, for the death of one police officer. You had 9 members of the MOVE organization who were given 100 years each to serve in prison. And the continuous struggle of the people was able to get them released. But it, you know, it's a lot. Frank, you want to add something? I can't stop shaking my head.
I mean, the only thing I can add is, like, you know, Tianin, you know, said almost everything. Oh, I mean, it's one thing we should know, that these people, you know, is something that is embedded in them, is something that is part of them, to be so wicked and inhumane, but there will be the same people that will come out and speak, and you think that they are so godly, they are so holy, and they are so human. But it just, the other side to it, that the way we see them and the way they portray themselves, the way they speak, is not how who they really are. And these people, today they are still doing these things, even around the world, and where they have black people are residing, where they have black nations, they are still going there doing their experiment. These drugs, these vaccines and things that they gave us, these are the same experiment, that they are carrying on and stuff. And you never hear, that a white person remain is in a museum. I don't think so. I don't think there is any museum in the world that you see a white person in a museum and they are doing a study on it. These people, look, I can tell you, they are surprised, the kind of nature that the Creator make us in, because we survive in every ill behavior that they bring to us. We survive it. We survive, ill vaccine, bad vaccines and all of those things, and disease, that HIV and TB and Ebola that they create. And at the end of the day, our immune system stay adapt to it and we survive it. So these people, they are still confused, and that's why they keep doing experiment. They keep discovering every time and thing, but we are just so close that we're not really getting the intention of these people.
Yeah, and I think, like as a materialist, I feel like, Europeans, before they came out of Europe, they were under extreme, like harsh conditions. They were living under harsh conditions, like scarcity. They just came out of the bubonic plague, where almost a half of the population died off. So they had to leave out of Europe and look for resources and lands in other places. And so that begins the exploitation exploitation of American land and enslavement of African people. But I think, like, this psychology that they have developed is just like coming out of Europe. I just feel like the material conditions that they were living in had just gives, like this insanity, like this, it's just something, like we say there's something about them, we're trying to pinpoint it. But I think like environmental conditions have something to do with that. And then they create a system that sort of emulates those conditions with capitalism, where they create this illusion of scarcity. And so, African people are put in conditions of poverty, even though we live in a world where there's abundance of resources and we can develop, sustainable resources at that. But yeah, it's a lot.
Deep.
The story is just like crazy, man. But this, like I said, there's a press conference this Wednesday. The fight is on to find out, what's going on with those remains, and this hell to be paid for these acts. But we can move on to the next story. Mikaya Ryan. This is the conversation that's being had through social media. There's a lot of discussion that's taking place on whether this shooting was justified. There's so much, and I'm coming with sort of like a fresh perspective, because I don't really like listen to like the social media. I don't get involved in those discussions. So I'm really just like basing my thoughts through what I saw, like the video, and of course, like just seeing like the 16-year-old being shot down. And so, when I look at it, I can't, like, for one, just being a colonized people, there's nothing that the state can do to African people that I can just justify or rationalize. I look at the murder of Mikaya Ryan just like I would look at the murder of Corinne Gaines, Mike Brown, and George Floyd, and all of these. These are people who are victims of the state. Like Mikaya Bryant, was a victim before she was shot down by the police to even get to that point. So, like, you know, under colonial conditions, any act that African people, any like internal intercommunal violence or horizontal violence that's perpetrated, you know, fighting within our communities with each other, all of that is a result of our colonial conditions. There's you know, numerous things that this police officer could have did without, you know, shooting Mikaya Bryant down like a dog in the streets. They don't even treat dogs that way. And I, you know, I feel like you know, when we look at this, we got to look at how the system itself had failed Mikaya Bryant. Her, you know, we can say like the family fell, but the family is part of a social system as well. So, you know, all of these things we have to connect and see how do we get to this point where she was in the streets fighting and had to be shot down by the police. But that's just some thoughts that I had. You know, I got some other thoughts, but I'm gonna leave it.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, people are not thinking about the whole setup to where this became necessary to begin with. So you can't just start at, well, she was about to kill someone with a knife, you know, and so she had to be shot down. You have to go back to like why. First of all, like, she was a foster child, so she was in state custody. She was a ward of the state of Ohio. So right there, you know, she was removed from her family and she was placed inside of a foster family with the idea that she will be safer living with strangers than she would with her own family. And if any of you know me, y'all know I'm very critical of that system. So she was put in, she was a ward of the state. And at that point, she becomes endangered. So she calls the police, you know, because my understanding is that there were some grown women trying to fight her. So she calls the police. And the police come on the scene, and my understanding is they took a while. That's what I heard, and things kept escalating. And then what we seen happened. There's a lot that happened wrong between the shooting and the genesis of this. Her being, like I said, a ward of the court. And so we have to have that analytical view and say that, are we okay living under these conditions where we require people to come with guns to mediate our disputes, where we require our children to be taken to begin with, where we require ourselves to be put inside of these vulnerable states? Because whenever that happens, things like this are inevitable. So she's really I think a victim. Stop. She's a victim of the larger system, and not just, we can't just take like the small clip and say, oh, that's what it is. You know, she's the one that was the one who was a danger to society. Society also is a danger to us. And so we have to have an analytical view of the whole situation and not just take the snippet that they want us to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And the sad part about it is that it is most of our people that are even justifying the killing as, you know, she was right to be shot. The thing here is, you know, I think we African, we tend to, you know, get on ourselves. Like, how about this guy writing house that killed several people? And he was apprehended by the police, and he's alive today. How about Dede Roof that killed a lot of people, and he was apprehended by the police, and he's alive today? And many other. I have seen a video where this white guy, he had a knife and threatened a police officer, and he never got shot. And they caught him, they took the knife from him. I have seen a video where this white guy fought 2 police officers, and he beat them with the baton. And he got in the police officer car and drove away without no bullet. So I did tell me, you know, those incidences, those few incidences, you know, and the police people were not, you know, fearful of their life. The issue here is, as a police officer, no one want to justify this as, you know, he was right to shoot this girl. The fight remain, and the fight will always be. You as a police officer, you are trained to de-escalate situation like that. I believe in my mind, if he was going to say something like, you know, pull out knife down to make his presence known at that time, at that moment, this girl would have put this knife down, and this girl would have left her friend. But there was no command given, And, you know, because the fact that, I mean, these people on the police force, they gave them this training, you know, on how to approach Black people whenever there's a 911 call and, you know, a Black person is involved. And the fact that a 911 will be died and the 911 operator asking whosoever that call, is a person Black, is a person white, or is a person white collar or color, because what they're doing here is they're trying to create a picture to let this police officer know that this person is a Black person. So when you go in there, you should be careful. So once that thing is in the person's mind, once they get there and they see things of that kind, like guns, like knife or whatsoever, the first thing that comes to their mind is this person is dangerous. Black people are dangerous. So he will shoot. So when he got there, I believe he did not even give any comment or make his presence known over there. And you see, for this girl to drop the knife or for this girl to leave her friend. So the moment he got there and saw the knife and saw this girl reaction, and he shot this person. And by you shooting somebody, not even one, not two, not three, but 4, 5, 6, that's a murder.
Yeah, I think I was going to make a comment, and somebody beat me to the punch with a question. But I think, like, what this shows, this killing, the contradiction that exists within our communities, where we need to secure our own communities. Like, if we're going to look at anyone to blame in this situation, it can't be Mikaya Bryant. It has to be our inability to secure our own neighborhoods. It has to be the community. How our response is to call the police. That should not be our response. Like, we have to have community control. One option is community control of the police, but I'm all about the abolition of the police and us developing systems of security where we're able to handle our own issues. Transformative justice being a way to deal with some of these issues that we have within our communities, because we can't continue to we can't say, you know, this is the oppressor, this is the colonizer, this is the racist, but we look for their institutions to provide us education, to provide us security, and so forth. And so when we talk about Africa and Africom, Africom needs to get out. It's the same thing within our communities. Like, the police need to get out. And this may be a radical idea for a lot of people, but we have to begin to, think like this. How can we defend ourselves, and how can we deal with our own issues so we don't have to worry about calling the police so they can come and shoot someone down in the streets?
Yeah.
I
know you're about to pivot, but I know we're kind of transition. But from what I agree with everything you guys were saying. And I think, like, this kind of brings out the contradiction of a lot of our people regarding police brutality. I have a theory that the reason why it seems like, out of all the issues that we have as Africans in this country, the one that usually gets people out and protesting is police brutality. My theory is that the people who feel like they did everything right, they listened to the cops, they went to work, they're a productive member of the society, they feel like they're endangered even though they did everything quote unquote right. And those people are the ones who want to basically blame Mikaya Bryant, because to them, she didn't do it right. She didn't follow the protocol that we would follow. And so I think it's just a dangerous precedent whenever we try to qualify which police killings are deserving and which ones aren't. So I just wanted to throw that in there, because I noticed, a lot of people, we can become so militant about police brutality and not anything else. But like you said, there are other issues that are present. The system is the real issue. And we have to be just as bold and just as provocative about facing the system in itself as we are these individual instances.
Indeed. Like, man, so much to say about this. And, but last point, for those people who want to talk about the family unit and so forth. And I mentioned this earlier, we have to look at patriarchy. We have to look at the state as well. Like, if you're going to look at the family, remember, the family is being developed within the social system itself. So, we are going to pivot and go into the book reading. There should be a link for the Black Radical Tradition. We're going to be looking at Chapter 2C, Program of the African Blood Brotherhood, which is on page 62. And so I want to quickly encourage everybody to join We Charge Colonialism. You can send us an email at info@wechargecolonialism.org. Visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org. Find out how you can get involved in the various programs and committees that we do have. So we need, African people to not just sit on the sidelines, but to be a part of this process of bringing on transformation, change, revolution within society. Also,
I was gonna say, by the way, our membership application is back up. In case anyone has sent one and not heard back from us, if you could please resend it. It's back up on our site.
All right. So do that today. Also, just want to say free Mamiya, happy birthday to Mamiya Abu Jamal. Today is Mamiya's 66th birthday, I believe. And there's going to be a rally of formation in City Hall in Philadelphia. So if you're in Philadelphia or in the area, that begins at 2 p.m. today. So free Mamiya, happy born day to Mamiya Abu Jamal. So hopefully we're all there. I'm going to begin the reading. 2C, Program of the African Blood Brotherhood. The African Blood Brotherhood. And this is an organization that existed, as you can see, in the early part of the 20th century. And so this is written in 1922. A race without a program is like a ship at sea without a rudder. It is absolutely at the mercy of the elements. It is buffeted hither and thither, and in a storm is bound to flounder. It is in such a plight at this that the Negro race has drifted for the past 50 years and more. Rarely ever did it know exactly what it was seeking, and never once did it formulate any intelligent and workable plan of getting what it was seeking, even in the rare instances when it did know what it wanted. It is to meet this unfortunate condition and to supply a rudder for the Negro ship of state, a definite directive force, that the following program adopted by the African Blood Brotherhood is herewith offered for the consideration of other Negro organizations and of the race in general. There is nothing illusory or impractical about this program. Every point is based upon the historical experience of some section or other of the great human family. Those who formulated the program recognize, 1, the economic nature of the struggle, not wholly economic, but nearly so. 2, that it is essential to know from whom our oppression comes, that is, who are our enemies. 3, that it is not necessary for Negroes to be able to endorse the program of these other movements before they can make common cause with them against the common enemy. That the important thing about Soviet Russia, for example, is not the merits or demerits of the Soviet form of government, but the outstanding fact that the Soviet Russia is opposing the imperialist robbers who have partitioned our motherland and subjugated our kindred, and that Soviet Russia is feared by those imperialist nations and by all the capitalist plunderbuns of the earth, from whose covetousness and murderous inhumanity we at present suffer in many lands. Africa. Our motherland Africa is divided by the big capitalist powers into so-called colonies. The colonies in turn are parceled out to white planters and capitalists, some of them colonists, other absentee landlords. To this end, the free life of the African peoples have been broken up and the natives deprived of their lands in order to force them to work at starvation wages on the lands of these white capitalists. These planter capitalists have settled down in our country to exploit the riches of the land as well as the labor of our people. But our people were not tamely submissive and had to be subjugated. They refused to be exploited and rebelled and fought the invader in an unequal struggle. The invaders, armed with weapons of modern technique and precision, as against the primitive and old weapons of our forefathers, were finally able to subdue our people, but not until many a British square had been broken and many a sudden disaster suffered by the force of all the invading capitalist powers.
Should we take a break?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I could have stopped you honestly at the first paragraph because it's so true. So I'll just vent a little bit, because I'm sure you guys are the same. You constantly thinking about whatever people are going to do, how are we going to get out of this situation, around the clock. And it's like, I think the thing that frustrates me the most is when I notice we are going along with something that's not necessarily going to change your condition. So when you look at like a lot of the protests, when you look at the times that we do get angry, a lot of them are at things that are symptoms rather than actually the system. And it's kind of like, how do you get out of that situation where you're constantly reacting? But like you said, like our people, we don't have a program and we're not willing to sit down and really figure this thing out. Like we have people who are bought and paid for by the system telling us what we should or should not do or what's best for our people, instead of the people who are most affected, those who have no incentive in the system continuing as it does, coming together and actually having a program. And it's going to take something very radical, I know, for us to get on that same page to where we can be analytical like that and actually have a real full program that we're going to attack this thing. But until then, until we have that commitment to do that, we're just going to keep seeing a lot of people just blowing with the wind. You know, that's kind of like where I feel like we are right now. Like, you know, someone says someone was racist to me and people get mad, and then other things are happening in our communities and we're just like turning a blind eye. So like you said, we're like was it a ship without a sail or something like that? That's literally what we are.
Yeah, in adding to that, what I got from this chapter, you know, just to add up, is that you cannot be on the same boat with your enemy and you expect to cross that river safely, whereas your enemy is the one petting the canoe and you have no authority over that canoe, and you expect yourself to cross this river. Again, I repeat myself. So the issue here, I think Malcolm X told us, you know, who told you to hate yourself? And Malcolm X also told her that your freedom lies in your hands. Your freedom does not lie. How do you call it? Your freedom is not in the hands of the one who colonized you, who oppressed you, who enslaved you. Because if you feel that your freedom is in the hands of those who enslave or colonize you, then you will now be free, because you keep asking them, you know, to be free, and they will never free you because you believe that your freedom is, you know, with them, and now new your freedom is within you. That is to wake up, to empower yourself, and to rally up and to organize. And that's why those that came before us, they also saw it, and they keep telling us the only way to liberation, the only way to African empowerment is through organizational building, is through coming together, is through unity, and not unity with the one that oppress you, because unity with the one that oppress you, they will always be the one to get information, you know, and take it to their counterpart and stuff. So I think that's what I got from this video, that, you know, we can only succeed, we can only move on by coming together ourselves.
But what do y'all think like it's going to take for us to do that and have a program like he's speaking about?
I think one thing, this is one aspect of what we are doing here, you know, educating the public and telling the public this is what we need to do. That's another aspect. And another aspect here is, you know, organization building. And again, with that, again, you see, what the capitalists are known of doing is that they don't just come to you and asking you to be part of them. What they do here is they are like Satan in the Bible that came to Eve and told Eve that you need to eat this apple. This apple, when you eat the apple, it gave you knowledge, it gave you wisdom, and that's how God don't want you to eat. And that is what exactly the imperialists are doing. So when they come to our people, they are not just coming telling our people, look, we have this. They come with money, they come with food, they come with incentive. You see, so with that tactics, we cannot just go to our people and keep telling our people we need organization building. We need unity. We need to come together without no incentive. And meanwhile, these imperialists are carrying incentive. Where do you think our people will go?
True.
Yeah, I'm thinking just to that question, first thing that came to my mind was just how, you know, there's an African Union, right? There's an organization, African Union, that was created, who's serving, like, you know, the interest right nowadays, you know, neocolonialism, you know, serving the interests of you know, capitalism, you know, a lot of those leaders. But the, you know, the fact that you have these leaders who came together, it's going to take us, like, the leadership of the several organizations that are out there fighting for a united Africa, that's fighting against colonialism and the independence, liberation of African people, like the leadership to come together and sort of form some sort of what they call that, like a Congress, among ourselves, even if it's just like within the country of America, just to start off. But ideally, we want to cross borders with our Caribbean brothers and sisters, those in Europe and those on the continent. But I think like from the grassroots, just the leadership coming together that already has like a base, and then we can, I'm looking at that maybe it's just being a first step. And I know this has been tried, throughout the years, but to no success, no avail,
No, you're right. And I love what both of y'all said. So Frank, I absolutely agree. Like we have to incentivize the people, because obviously, so I heard a criticism of us, in the diaspora who talk about organizing, all that stuff, that, if you're on a continent and you're poor and you live on cents a day, you don't have the luxury of talking about African unity and coming together and organizing. You have to basically find a way to feed your family. And that's true. Like we have to find a way that we can get our people who are in the real struggle, who don't have an incentive in the system, to come together. And we're not going to be able to do that with just talk and rhetoric. And then Ikemba, I like the point that you pointed out, because I feel like we have to have another Pan-African Congress. It's funny, I was reading a book and I was talking about how the reason why the decolonization process started after World War II was because like a lot of Africans, they were just disgruntled. Like, we're going to fight your war and then come back and be colonized subjects? Heck no. So they said, all right, we're going to start the decolonization process. And then at the Pan-Africanist Congress, all of them came together and they had a program. So I just want to say I appreciated both the points you guys made.
Yeah, and I think like another thing that we need to look into is funding organizations in Africa, like on the continent, that are, just like how the imperialists, the colonists, they have their puppets, like we don't want any puppets, but I'm just saying like we want to support those groups who are fighting against neocolonialism and colonialism on the continent. Because once again, like we talk about resources, like some of those organizations don't have the resources that we may be able to provide. So just like how Africans come to the diaspora and they send money back to their families, like us in the diaspora, we have to really like look at building that bridge, doing a better job at that, and connecting with those political organizations on the ground, economic organizations on the ground, to help them develop so we can, fight on all fronts. So I do too. Before I go on though, there was another point I just wanted to make. Like this was written in 1922, and so we have like it's almost been 100 years. And if you look at what he says, the author says under Africa, how our motherland Africa is divided by the big capitalist powers into so-called colonies. The colonies, in turn, are parceled out to white planters and capitalists, some of them colonists, other absentee landlords. To this end, the free life of the African peoples have been broken up, and the natives deprived of their lands in order to force them to work at starvation wages on the lands of these white capitalists. Like 100 years later, and I think like you have raised the question as far as like, what can we do? It's like, man, we've been for decades fighting the same fight. This can be written today.
Such a long time. That's the frustrating part. So, the struggle goes on.
Yeah. So I go to how we were enslaved. And the fight was not yet over. People living in oppression may be compared to a volcano. At any moment, it may rise like a giant and run its enemies into the sea. To prevent this eventuality, the capitalist planters, with the aid of their home governments, have organized colonial armies, formed and equipped according to the methods of modern technique, and to conquer our militant spirit and win us to slavish acceptance of their dominance that brought into the white man's religion, Christianity, and with it, whiskey. By the white man's religion, our people's militant spirit was drugged. With his whiskey, they were debauched. the white man's treachery, the white man's religion and whiskey had as great a part in bringing about our enslavement as the white man's guns. But in order to more intensively exploit our rich motherland and the cheap labor power of an enslaved people, it was necessary to bring into our land certain machine industries and certain material improvements like railroads, etc. And today we may witness, especially in the coast cities of Africa, the steady growth of modern enterprise. With the introduction of industrial equipment, the African has learned to wield the white man's machines, his guns, his methods, and with the possession of this knowledge, has grown a new hope and determination to achieve his freedom and become the master of his own motherland. Hope never more justified. Indeed, the hope of the Negro people to free themselves from the imperialists and slavers was never more justified than at present. The home governments of the planter capitalists are weakening day to day and are trembling under the menace of the proletarian revolution. The oppressed colonies and small nations are in constant rebellion as witnessed the Irish, Turks, Persians, Indians, Arabs, Egyptians, etc. While the interior of Africa is as yet barely touched by predatory capitalism, the tribes fully realize the danger they would be subjected to should the enslavers penetrate more into the interior. Under the leadership of the more able and developed Negroes in the coast district, the tremendous power of the Negro race in Africa could be organized. Toward this end, we propose that every effort should be bent to organize the Negroes of the coast districts and bring all Negro organizations in each of the African countries into a worldwide Negro Federation. The various sections of the Federation to have their own executive committees, etc., and to get in touch with the tribes in the interior with a view of common action. The Supreme Executive Committee to get in touch with all other peoples of the African continent, the Arabs, Egyptians, etc., as well as the revolutionists of Europe and America, for the purpose of effecting coordination and action. Anybody want to make any comments? I don't know what y'all think about the Arabs, though. What y'all thoughts about that?
Like specifically the colonialism under Arabs?
Well, yeah, I guess. Is he saying, is the author saying though, like, built this when he says Negro Federation, is he including, or maybe I'm reading this wrong, or like he's including because the Arabs, you got settler colonialism, Arabs as well, settled in Africa and colonized indigenous African people. So I think like that's a contradiction that needs to be brought up as well,
Yeah. You mean like North Africa, like what do we do about
yeah.
that? I mean, honestly, so I'm not, and this is a criticism I think on not just me, but a lot of us, I'm not so ingrained into necessarily removing Arabs from North Africa, because it's just been like a long time.
Yeah.
That's not so, but to me, like, when I look at like the idea of a global Negro plan, I guess that would be parts of Africa where there's, and all Africa has some type of African population, but the vast majority of Africa being, occupied by African people, and obviously us abroad who are not inside of Africa. That's how I take it. I don't know if you're the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. From what I would get from that reading here is when I believe when he was talking about the Negro, it's just that when we say African, where they have in South Africa, they always say it's white African and, and black African, to bring some kind of a classism, between us and stuff. So when they talk about Negro, I believe they are talking about Negro who recognize the struggle of other Negro, like how Nelson Mandela gave a profound answer when he was in America here when they asked him about Cuba. And he said, your enemy, we want to make America aware clearly that America's enemy is not our enemy. And our enemy is not America's enemy. Just because you are an enemy to certain people or to a nation, that doesn't mean we are an enemy to that nation. Because what happened here is that nation recognized our struggle. that nation fight alongside with our struggle, and that nation fought hard to give us independence. In fact, that nation support us, financially, and also through military and all of those things. So if you are an enemy to that country, we are not an enemy. So I believe what I can conclude from this sentence or from this reading, when he's talking about Negro, I think he's just talking about people who recognize each other's struggle as the same and fight together. But if you don't recognize my struggle and you are on the side of the capitalists to oppress me or to exploit me, I don't count you as a Negro. Maybe I would say you are a horse Negro, like Malcolm X said.
Something else though he was talking about that I felt like was significant was the role that Christianity has played in Africa. And I'm a Christian, but I feel like we has to be an in-depth attack on the Christianity that we have received. There has to be an intentional, from African people, there has to be an intentional effort to unlearn that Christianity, because to me that's not the Christianity that originated in Palestine. It's a white supremacist instrument that has really incapacitated us, like you said, in so many ways. Some of us, we really will wait for death, for our justice and go along with this agenda, just trying to survive and not take actions to free ourselves, So that's a sorry for y'all. But yeah, that's a very important conversation that has to be had. And that's something we have to strategize around. How are we going to infect that, not just Christianity, but also Islam too? I don't think Islam is the pacification, had the same pacification, but there are other things that have been ingrained into us by the colonizers that we have to have a really militant stance against ideologically. And it doesn't have to be erasing. Some people feel like you have to erase, these faiths inside of the continent. I'm a believer in Nkrumah that if you're a true believer of any of those types of beliefs or traditional African spiritual beliefs, you have to believe in your own liberation, and you have to be able to differentiate from what people have taught you and what is actually of your own good. Stop. So I'm gonna have to stop right now.
Yeah, let me just add to that, brother, and come back just 1 minute. The reality here is, I think from my view, from my perspective, I would say we have to get rid of all Western religion, or almost all Western culture, because Western religion have done nothing to Africa. Western religion, how they call it, made Africa powerless and African religion powerless. Let me say this: before Western religion came to Africa, we practiced Christianity. Christianity was in Africa. Africa was a continent, or it is a continent that had very form of worship, very form of religion. So Christianity was being practiced in Africa at that time, but it was not huge and forceful on the people and those things. So what happened when the white man came? They saw that Christianity was the only religion that they could actually interpret it to fit with their narrative, and then bring it back to us. With other religion, they couldn't interpret that religion that will fit to their ideology to bring it back to us. We will understand that no, this came from here, this came from our culture and all of those things. So Christianity was the only religion that they could interpret it, but Christianity was already in Africa. When you go to history, they will tell you Christianity was already in Ethiopia, even before coming down to Egypt and all of those things. So it was there, it was being practiced, and there are evidence, in those places and things that we practice Christianity.
And fun fact, like if any of you are not aware of Ethiopian Coptic Church, but the first Bible was actually out of Ethiopia. It came 800 years before the King James Bible was even created. But a lot of people treat the King James Bible like it was the first Bible. Fun fact.
Thank you for that. An hour is not enough time. Hey, but this was a great discussion every Saturday at 10 a.m. And make sure, you tell a friend to to get on here and be a part of this discussion so we can continue to deepen, our analysis of colonialism, because we do charge colonialism. We charge colonialism, and we're going to examine it, and we're going to come up with practical solutions to liberate African people all over the world. So we want you to be a part of this process. Make sure that you visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org. Email us at info@wechargecolonialism. Find out how you can get involved. And again, just want to appreciate everybody for continuing to tune in to this to our podcast and book club every week. Until next week, peace.